Now, before we get started today, I do want to let you know a little bit of the class structure of how the next 4 weeks will look. So, given that this is a freezing exercise class, what we're always going to do is we will always start in a seated position as a bit of a warm up, and then we'll move to a standing position for the majority of the class. Now, because of the nature of the class, given that we are targeting balance and freezing issues, it's really important that you stay safe at home with your balance as much as possible. So I would encourage you to always have something to hold on to if you feel like you might be a little bit wobbly, or have somebody present in the home to support you during this class if you're a bit worried about some of those balance issues. I don't want anyone to get injured in the class, so please do be careful, okay? Now, we have 4 classes together. Today is class number 1, and the main focus of today's class will be mostly on weight shifting and starting to bring a little bit of body awareness into where our center of gravity is over our base of support. And the reason we're starting with that today is because freezing is a little bit of a tricky issue to deal with, mostly because there's lots of different reasons why someone might freeze. So it's more complicated than just a physical reason. And so freezing can be caused by a number of different things. The first one being the physical aspect. So if you're someone who walks with a shuffly walking pattern, you can't quite lift your feet up high enough, you can't quite take a big step, then those kind of things will contribute to freezing as well, because we're not able to properly weight shift from foot to foot. We're moving base of support as we're moving, so that can cause a bit of freezing. Because ironically, if you were to mimic a freezing episode by walking really quick, really shuffly steps, you'll actually trigger a freezing episode. So there's that kind of physical aspect that causes freezing. But there's also a bit of a cognitive aspect as well, where if you're trying to concentrate on more than one thing at a time, you might find that situation to be a situation you tend to freeze more in. And so this is sort of why we don't always freeze all the time, but we freeze in certain scenarios, like if you're about to approach a destination, like a chair or a toilet, you might freeze. When you're in a narrow hallway, a narrow doorway, when the texture of the ground changes from, say, tiles to carpet or something like that, where there's a bit of a cognitive involvement where you have to concentrate on more than one thing at a time, that might cause some freezing as well. And of course, we know there's an emotional aspect of freezing. So if you're in a situation where it's high stress, or lots of people are looking at you as they're crossing the street, things like that, the more anxious you feel, the more you'll get that kind of freezing coming. And so there's lots of different reasons why someone might freeze. So it's very complicated in nature. But in the next 4 weeks, we'll try to tackle some of these more common issues related to freezing. So today being concentrated mostly on our ability to weight shift. So we'll create movement that's effective enough for you to take a step, because we're weight shifting, we're able to be a bit more body aware, moving our center of gravity on top of a moving base of support. So that's what we're concentrating on today. Next week, for class number 2, we'll be doing a little bit more multi-directional type stepping, and working on clearance of your feet as you're moving. And then we'll also talk a little bit about strategies for freezing as well. So that will be next class. We'll talk more about what you can do if you are experiencing a freezing episode. And then class number 3 will work on approaching a destination, like what to do if you're freezing, when you're approaching a chair, a toilet, things like that. If the freezing strategies haven't worked for you, we can talk about alternative ways you can kind of get around a more tricky freezing episode. And then in session number 4, we'll do a little bit of dual tasking, which is basically when you do a physical task paired with a little bit of a cognition task. So we'll tackle all of these things in the next 4 weeks. And even though 4 weeks is quite a short time to be able to deal with troublesome freezing, but we'll try our best to hit as many of these topics as possible. So it gives you a good idea of what you might be able to work on and what you might be able to do. Thank you, Neil. Yes, it is my birthday tomorrow. I can't believe you remembered. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to get started today. I've got my chair set up behind me. Now, another safety note here is the chair that you're going to be using today and for the remainder of the series, ideally, we don't want any wheels on the chairs, okay? So we don't want it to be a computer or office chair because if it's got wheels, it's going to move and be a little unsafe as we're doing certain things today. So ideally, a chair that does not move, and just make sure you have things to hold on to in the space around you if you're feeling a little wobbly when you do stand up, or have a care partner present to help you as well. Okay, the last thing is footwear is also really important. If you're on hardwood floor, please don't wear socks. I don't want anyone to slip during the class, as I mentioned earlier, because of the nature of the freezing class being that we are targeting balance type of issues and our ability to weight shift and step and things like that. I just don't want anybody to fall and injure themselves. So please, please be careful. Okay, I'm going to move back. I can feel my nose getting a little sniffly already. I do apologize. Hopefully you can still hear me okay, even though my voice sounds a little funny today. So we're going to start in our chair. Now, it's really important that when we're sitting on our chair, we're not sitting all the way back. So if I turn sideways, what I don't want to see is I don't want anyone to be like this in the chair as we're moving, okay? Because even though we're starting in a chair, it's really important that we're already engaging our body to get used to get started with exercise. And if we're in this kind of position, our weight's really far back in the chair, and we're not actually going to be using much of our tummy muscles. We're engaging our body to be upright, which is what we need when we're working on things like balance and freezing. And so I'm going to invite you to sit forward in your chair. Hopefully there's a little bit of space between you and the back of the chair. And you'll notice that I'm upright. So my shoulders are over my hips and I'm nice and tall. So I'm not in this kind of slouch position. I want to be in this active, engaged position in the chair, okay? So let me turn back around to face you. So the first thing we're going to do here, whoops, let me back a little bit, is we're sitting up nice and tall. Our hands are on our hips, and we're going to be moving our ankles like so. So we're going to lift our heels up as high as we can, and then we're going to lower them down, and we're going to lift our toes up as high as we can, like before, as you can see. I'm lifting my heels up as high as I can, lifting my toes up as high as I can. So I'm starting to warm up those ankles here. And as you're doing this, you want to make sure we're not like this slouched in the chair or leaning sideways. You want to be as tall as you possibly can. Keep going. I'm just letting somebody in from the waiting room. Okay. Oh, and I see a comment here. That's okay. If you've injured yourself, and you need to modify or you can't do the whole class, that's absolutely okay. No problem at all. You can do what you can. And watching the class will probably be helpful as well because you can still learn some of these concepts of freezing that we'll be talking about throughout the class. Okay, we're going to keep going. For the person who just joined, hello, welcome. Please join us. We're starting in a seated position and we'll move to a standing position as the class goes on. Okay. Now we're going to flatten our feet on the floor. We're still sitting up nice and tall. We're going to now take our leg and we're going to straighten that knee, and you're going to show me the bottom of your foot, and then we're going to lower that leg down and repeat on the same thing on the other side. You're straightening that knee, lifting up your foot. You're showing me the bottom of your foot. And as I'm doing this movement, you'll notice that I'm still sitting up nice and tall, and I'm not going like this, slouching back or leaning back as I'm straightening my knees. I still want to be upright over my sitting bones as much as I can. Now, our freezing series, we're doing 4 classes. And so for the next 4 classes, you'll notice that we're going to be progressing with our exercises. So we'll start relatively basic today in terms of the concepts that we're going over with the swaying and weight shifting. And then as the classes go on, we'll kind of build on some of these skills. Good, keep going. Now, if I'm doing anything too quickly for you in this class, please feel free to slow it down. It does not have to be the same speed that I'm doing, as long as you're maintaining the technique here, for example, keeping yourself upright as we're doing this. Okay. Let's drop those arms, shake them out for a moment, and we're going to go into some nice gentle marching. And as we're marching, we're trying to create a nice and rhythmic kind of march. So it's like you're stomping on the floor and you're hearing the stomps that you're creating on the floor, and you want that to be nice and rhythmic. So stomp, 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 that kind of rhythm. Now, it doesn't have to be the same speed I'm doing. It could be whatever speed you choose, but I do want you to try and keep the stomps as rhythmic as you can, almost like you're beating a drum. You want it to be nice and rhythmic, letting those arms swing, stomping the floor as you're doing the marching, keeping nice and tall chest ocean. And now we're going to keep going with the stomping pattern, except now we're going to go out, out, in, out, out, in. So you want the feet to be still in this marching pattern, but now we're just going out, out, in, out, out, in. So you still want to hear that rhythm, that rhythmic pattern of the way that you're marching your legs. We're just moving them out and in. Nicely done. Stomping the floor as you're doing this. You can hear that kind of beat of stomping. Nice and rhythmic if you can. Sitting up nice and tall, hopefully. Nobody should be slouching in their chairs. Remember, this is our warm-up, so it doesn't have to be a perfect movement right now. We're just getting our body going, but we still want that rhythmic stomping pattern. You probably can't hear me snap. I don't know why I'm snapping. I was using that as a little bit of audio cue, but you probably can't hear me snapping because I got headphones in. But you get the idea. You want it to be that rhythmic pattern, that rhythmic stomping. Nicely done. Let's do two more. Last one. And flatten the feet, sitting up nice and tall still. We're going to float those arms out beside us. Nice big open reaches. And we're going to tip down into a bit of a side stretch. So it's almost like you're trying to reach one hand to the floor and the other to the ceiling. Your shoulders and your chest they're facing forward. So we don't want to be turning down like this. We want to be nice and forward so you feel that stretch on the outside of your trunk. Nicely done. And coming back up and drop the arms. Same to the other side. We're going to float the arms up, nice wide open hands and fingers. And then we're going to tip down to the side. Big reaches, reaching your arms away from each other. And you should feel that stretch on the outside of your trunk there. Nicely done. And coming back up, let's drop the arms. We're going to take one hand, we're going to grab hold of the opposite knee. The other hand's going to wrap around the back of the chair. Sitting tall, you're going to pull yourself around into a rotational stretch such that you're looking at the back wall. So you're keeping your feet and knees where they are, you're anchoring them down. You're using your arms to kind of twist yourself around to look at that back wall, nice and tall. Make sure you're not holding your breath in the stretch. And we're going to release. Same to the other side. Take your hand, grab hold of the opposite knee. Other hand wrapping around the back of the chair, nice and tall. Use your arms to help you twist around so that you're looking at the back wall. And make sure that we're not getting shorter in this twist stretch. We want to almost keep growing like a corkscrew on the spot. Nicely done. And release. I'm going to turn sideways for a second so you can see me. We're going to do a bit of a upper back stretch. So I'm going to shuffle back in my seat. So I'm touching the back of my chair completely like this. I'm going to slouch a little bit. This is the only time you're allowed to slouch, so make use of this. I'm slouching in my chair, and I'm going to bring those arms up behind my head like so, making sure my elbows are pointing out to the side. So I don't want to be like this. I want to be open like this. And then I'm going to lean up and over the chair. Just be careful your chair doesn't tip. So you're leaning back into the chair to look at the ceiling, and you should feel a stretch through your back here. Just be careful if you've got a sore back, or if anything doesn't feel great for you in this position, please do a little less. And of course, be careful not to tip the chair back too far. And release. So let's do that one more time. Bring those arms up behind the head again. Elbows out to the side, opening the chest, leaning up and over the back of the chair. Nicely done. Coming back up and release. Sitting up nice and tall again in the chair, making sure you're shuffling to the front of your chair. Okay, we're now going to stand up for our standing portion of the class. Now, before we stand up, we want to talk a little bit about the technique to which we're using in order to stand up, okay? So I'm starting at the front of my chair. What I don't want to see is if you do this, you start at the back and then you try to stand up this way, because your weight is so far back in the chair. If you try to stand, it's going to be really tough because all your weight is back here, and then you're going to have to pull yourselves up using something in front of you, which we don't want. Or sometimes we're so far back in the chair, we stand and we're pushing the back of our legs into the chair to help us stand up. We also don't want that. We want good, effective sit to stands. And to do that, we're going to shuffle our bottom to the front of the chair, place our feet flat on the floor. In order to succeed with the stand, we need to keep our center of gravity on top of our base of support the entire time. So it looks like this. I'm bringing my weight forward. So it's almost like someone grabbed my t-shirt and it's yanking me forward, okay? I'm leaning forward as much as I can to get my center of gravity over my base of support, in this case, my feet. See how my center of gravity is balanced on top of my base of support, and then I'm going to push the floor away from me, keeping my center of gravity balanced on top of my base of support to stand up nice and tall. And then to sit down, I'm going to do the same thing in reverse. I'm bending my knees, sticking my bottom back, but my chest is going forward so that I'm still balancing my center of gravity on top of my base of support the entire time to sit, so that I'm not going and I'm falling back in the chair and my legs are coming up. You want to keep your center of gravity on top of your base of support the entire time for your sit to stand. So I'm going to invite you here to practice with me nice and slow. We don't want to be cheating and using those arms to pull us up or pushing the back of our legs into the chair. We want to practice our ability to control our center of gravity on top of our base of support, our feet, the entire time. And that's essentially what balance is. It's our ability to, well, in simple terms, it's our ability to keep our center of gravity on top of our moving base of support. So start here with the practice of the sit to stand, nice and slow. Really feel, be body aware about where you're putting your center of gravity. Is it on top of your feet? Are you balancing your center of gravity on top of your feet? The slower you do this, the better. The slower you do this, the more difficult, so the better, because the more you're able to really practice keeping your center of gravity over your base of support. So you're using the strength of your body, the strength of your muscles to practice the sit to stand rather than swinging up using momentum or using objects to pull on or pushing the back of your legs against the chair and things like that. So keep going. We're going to do a couple more of these in your own time. See if you can do 3 more sit-to stands in your own time. Really think about balancing your center of gravity on top of your base of support the entire time. So nobody should be cheating by swinging and using momentum or pushing the back of your legs against the chair or pulling with the arms and things like that. We want to be using the strength of your body to be able to do this sit to stand nice and slow, nice and controlled. On your third stand, you're going to stay standing. Take your time if you're not finished. I'm going to just have a look at everybody and make sure everyone is okay. Okay, wonderful. So now that we're standing, we're going to set ourselves up here a little bit. So remember at the beginning of the class, I mentioned that today we're concentrating on a lot of weight shifting and our ability to be more aware about where we're putting our center of gravity on top of the base of support. And the reason we're doing that for class 1 is because class 2, we're going to build on that by starting to practice multi-directional stepping and things like that. So we need to build a bit of a foundation. And so I would invite you to have something on either side to hold on to, or if you don't want to hold on to anything, that's fine too. But if you had something on either side, just in case, you can grab onto. So it could be the back of a chair, could be a table, could be a wall, whatever you're comfortable with at home, okay? And what we're going to start with here is you can see that my feet are about hip width apart, okay? Can you see that? They're about hip width apart. So I'm not standing like this, and I'm not standing like this either. I want my feet to be in a relatively neutral stance, hip width apart. And we're going to start with some forward and backward swings. So I'm going to turn sideways, actually. I'm going to move my chair so that it's not in the way. I'm going to turn sideways too, so you can see what I'm talking about. So my feet are hip width apart. I'm going to imagine my entire body is like a plane. I'm like an inverted pendulum. And I'm going to sway my weight forward. And then I'm going to sway back. So notice here how I'm not bending my knees or bending my hips, right? That's very different. Doing this and this is very different to doing this. So it's like your entire body is a plane and the fulcrum is at the ankles. So it's like I'm shifting my center of gravity forward to the fronts of my feet, and then I'm pulling my center of gravity to the back of my feet. Just be careful that we're not going so far back that you're going to fall, okay? So please be a little bit careful when you're swaying back. But this is the idea we're trying to play with today. We're shifting our weight forward, then we're shifting our weight back. And you want to shift within your base of support. So you don't want to shift so far that you then have to take a step to save your balance. So you really got to be self-aware, body aware here. Really going to tune into how our body is. And we're going to think about how far can I go forward without losing balance. I'm going to then bring my center of gravity back to the middle. And I'm going to do the same thing backwards, maybe a little less to the back. So you don't want to fall. You want to shift your weight to your heels, but not so far that you're going to lose your weight. Lose your balance backwards. And then we go back to the middle and we try it again. So hopefully you're already joining me here. Initially, when you first start this kind of sway movement, it's going to be quite subtle. You're not going to be able to move very far, and it might feel like you're barely moving at all, and that's okay. But you're going to try and play around with this to try to get your sway without you losing your balance, right? So this is what I was saying earlier about having something to hold on to, or maybe having a wall directly behind you if you're a bit worried about that backwards retropulsion. Letting your arms relax if you can. We're playing around with this kind of forward and backward sway. So remember, we're not bending our hips, right? We're not bending our knees. the entire body stays in one plank, and we're practicing this forward and backward sway. And this movement might seem very minimal, very subtle, and it might not feel very useful to you in this moment in time, but this is actually quite important because we're starting to build some body awareness and starting to feel where our center of gravity is over our base of support. Because like I mentioned earlier in the class, we're going to be building on this as the weeks go on, and we're going to use this kind of weight shift ability, this conscious effort of weight shifting our center of gravity over our base of support as a way for us to take steps. And this will also really help you when you're in an active freezing episode and you just can't unstick those feet off the floor. Because one of the strategies for freezing, which we'll talk more about next week, is actually going to be swaying, weight shifting, in order to clear your feet enough off the floor to actually be able to take a meaningful step. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense right now. We'll talk more about it as the weeks go on, but we're kind of starting to build a bit of a foundation here. But keep going with the sway, really feeling where your center of gravity is on top of your base of support. And by base of support, I mean your feet. You're really being able to play around with that weight shift, that forward and backward sway. Nicely done, everybody. We're going to stop here for a second. I'm going to turn to face you now. You can have those chairs beside you or the walls or whatever you have to hold on to. We're going to do that sway again, but this time we're going to go sideways. So just watch me for a second. My feet are still going to be hip width apart. So remember, we're not standing like this and we're not like this, okay? You want them to be in a relatively neutral stance. So your feet are hip width apart. So a moment ago, we did that forward and backward sway. We're going to continue that, but now we're going to go side to side with the sway, but your body is still like a plank of wood. So this swaying motion that I'm doing is not the same as this, right? So it's not the same as me moving my hips side to side. I'm keeping my body upright, and it's almost like the entire thing is moving like the inverted pendulum, like I'm going side to side. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So you'll probably feel going sideways much easier than going forward and backwards, partly because our base and support is a little larger going sideways because we're shifting our center of gravity over to the right borders of our feet or to the right foot and then over to the left. So we're kind of doing this shifting motion. And again, you want to make sure the shift is controlled. I don't want to see anybody do this. We're going really fast. We want it to be nice and controlled and slow. You're shifting your weight from side to side. And this is not the same as this. I don't want to see anybody's hips go like this. I want you to imagine you're a plank of wood and the whole body is going from side to side, swaying. Almost like a palm tree in the wind. Nicely done. Really feel as you're doing the swaying where your center of gravity is on top of your base of support. If you need to hold on to something, please do. We're going for the swaying motion. You're thinking about the center of gravity over your moving base of support. So again, this movement is probably a little subtle as well, but not more so than the forward and backward swing. This is probably going to be a little bit bigger of a movement than the forward and backward swing we did a moment ago. Make sure you're upright. You're not moving your hips. I see a couple of hips moving. We don't want to be doing hula dancing. We want the entire body to be swaying in one piece. So almost like the crown of your head is going from diagonal to diagonal. Really feel where your body is, where your center of gravity is. Nicely done, everybody. So again, I know this feels like a very small movement or a very subtle movement that might not feel very useful to you at all in this moment. But this is one of those skills that we're going to build on. So it's really important that we get the hang of you're feeling where your center of gravity is on top of your moving base of support, because the sway is going to be really important for us when we're having an active freezing episode. Nicely done. Okay, let's stop in the middle for a second. So now that we've done our forward backward sway and our side to side sway, we're now going to do a little bit of multi-directional sway. So you're going to imagine you're standing in the middle of a clock face. Okay, so imagine there's a clock face and you're standing right in the middle. And now you're going to sway in the direction of a clockwise direction. You're going to start by going to the 12 o'clock spot, back to the middle, then the 1 o'clock spot, back to the middle, the 2 o'clock spot, back to the middle, 3 o'clock, back to the middle, all the way around the clock, back to 12 o'clock. So we're now doing multiple directions with our sway. And just like before, you're really thinking about where your center of gravity is, and you're swaying. You're moving your center of gravity in the direction of that clockwise circle in the clock face. So you're going from 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, all the way around the clock until you get back to 12 o'clock. And as you're doing the sway, you'll notice that my shoulders and hips are facing forward the whole time. I'm not going to sway like this. I'm not turning my body towards the direction I'm going. My body is facing forward, and I'm swaying to the direction of whatever o'clock I'm doing. So I'm not turning and twisting my body, and I'm also not doing this. I'm not doing this with my hips, right? I'm not going like this. As I do my clock face, my body is upright, like a plank of wood. The only thing moving is really from the ankles, okay? You're like an upside down pendulum as you're doing this. You can take your time on this. You don't have to do this very quickly. The main thing here is I want you to make sure you're not sticking your hips in the direction that you're swaying, but instead your entire body, including your shoulders and head, are going in that direction as well. You want to be like a piece of plank, a plank of wood, nice and straight. You don't want to be bending at the knees or the hips as you're doing this clock face practice. Good. I see some nice swaying going. Stop, everybody. Good. Keep going. Once you hit the 12 o'clock spot, go around again in the clock face. Really practice that center of gravity shift without losing your balance and having to step in order to save your balance. So you're playing within the confines of your basic support. You don't want to be going over too far where you have to then step to save your balance. It's like your feet are cemented into the floor and you're swaying over the top like an inverted pendulum. From 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, that's probably going to be the most challenging for a lot of you, because the backward swing is always going to be a little more tough. So take your time on that. Remember, please be safe. I don't want anyone to fall. So if you're worried, you can stand with your back sort of close to a corner of a room or a wall, so that if you did fall back, you kind of lean into the wall to save your balance. Or if you have a care partner around, you can grab them to supervise a little bit, especially when you're going backwards. I don't want anyone to injure themselves, so please be careful in this exercise. Remember, you're keeping your shoulders and your hips facing forward, right? We don't want to turn. No turning towards the direction you're going. You want your shoulders and hips to be facing forward the entire time. Good. Keep going. I'm just going to have a look at everybody, make sure no one's having any issues. Keep going with your swing. Make sure you're not moving your feet. Your feet stay on the spot. You're swaying. Good. Ooh, some really good swaying going on. Nicely done, everybody. Nice and controlled with the sway. Very good. Wherever you are, you're just going to make it another circle around the clock, and then we're going to move on. But please do take your time, okay? Don't rush. I want you to feel the center of gravity moving over your base support with control. Remember, nobody's hips should be doing this. We want the body to be nice and straight, like one piece of wood. You're an inverted pendulum. Good, nicely done, everybody. Nicely done. Really build that awareness of your center of gravity over your base of support. Nicely done. Okay, and when you're finished with your whole circle around the clock, you can just pause for a moment. You can grab some chairs to put beside you if you need to hold on to for our next exercise, because we're now going to add on to that and start practicing some stepping. Okay, so we were just practicing our swaying in multiple different directions. As I mentioned earlier, swaying is a really key element to get you out of an active freezing episode, because a lot of the times when we're frozen, our feet are like this on the spot and we just can't unstick them, and our weight is not going anywhere. And so if you have the ability to stop trying to move, but you're swaying on the spot and gaining more and more sway as you go to be able to then lift your feet off the floor to take a step forward, that's a really effective strategy to be using. So we'll talk more about that next week. For now, we're going to practice a little bit more of the swing and being able to clear our feet. Because in order for me to walk, if my weight stays in the middle of my feet, there's no way I can lift my legs because my weight is just stuck on top of them. Whereas if I'm trying to take a step forward and I'm saying, let's say I want to take a step with my right leg, but if I'm able to shift my weight to my left to clear my right foot, to de-weight it off the floor, much easier for me to take a step. And then I'm swaying my weight to my right leg to clear my left leg to take a step. Much easier, much more effective than you being stuck in the middle and then trying to move your feet, but your weight is on top of your feet, so they can't actually lift. So we're going to kind of build on that a little bit. Imagine I have another chair beside me, okay, in case you need to hold on. But what we're going to do is we're going to practice forward stepping, okay? So it's going to look like this. I'm going to shift my weight to the left to lift my right leg to step forward. And I'm putting my weight on the right leg now. And then I'm going to shift my weight back to the left foot to then lift my right leg back to where I started. Now I'm going to do the other side. I'm shifting my weight to the right leg in order to lift my left foot and put it down in front, stepping on the left foot. Then I'm going to shift my weight back to the right foot to then lift my left foot back to the starting position. So essentially, the movement you're doing is a forward step with the right, and then a forward step with the left, except I want you to do it slower and really think about this weight shift idea, okay? You're shifting your weight to one side in order to clear your foot off the floor to then take a step, and you're putting your weight on that foot. Then you're shifting your weight back to that left leg to lift the right foot off the floor and place it back down, and you're shifting your weight to distribute evenly over both feet. And then same thing on the other side. You're shifting your weight to the right leg to lift your left foot and bring it forward. You're stepping on the left foot. You're putting weight on the left foot. And then you're moving your weight to the right foot to clear your left foot again to bring it back to the starting position. then you shift your weight back to the middle. So it's equally distributed on both feet. And you do that again. So as you can imagine, if you feel a little wobbly, it's quite useful to have something to hold on to on both sides as you're practicing this weight shift. And I want you to do this slowly so you can really feel what I'm talking about when I'm saying that you want to weight shift. You want to move your center of gravity on top of your moving base of support. And by base of support, I mean your feet. Every time you do this. So we're consciously being aware. We're having more body awareness of where we're shifting our center of gravity in order to actually make that meaningful step. Because we have to shift our weight in order to clear our foot from the floor. Hopefully that makes sense. So I'm shifting my weight to clear my left foot. Bring it forward. I'm stepping on that foot. I'm putting weight on that foot. Then I'm shifting my weight to the back foot in order to clear my front foot to bring it to the beginning position. And I'm shifting my weight into the middle in order to evenly distribute my weight. Hopefully that makes sense. So as you can probably feel, we're building on that weight shifting that we did at the beginning of today's class, or that we did a moment ago. We're building on this ability to weight shift with our moving base of support. So we're shifting our weight from foot to foot as we're doing this movement. Making sure that you're holding on if you need to, okay? I don't want anyone to fall. You're taking your time with this. All we're doing is practicing the stepping forward with each foot, but of course we're weight shifting in order to practice this forward step. Good, nice, stay down. Okay, we're gonna stop for a second. We're gonna keep building on with this, except now rather than doing the forward stepping, we're gonna do sideways stepping. So if I move this chair for a second, pretend I'm still holding on, it looks like this. I'm gonna shift my weight to the left to lift my right leg off the floor, and I'm gonna take a step out to the side. I'm shifting my weight to the foot that I'm stepping on. Then I'm shifting my weight back to the left in order to lift my right leg back to the middle, and I'm distributing my weight between the two of my feet. And then same thing on the left side. I gotta shift my weight to the right in order to lift my left leg off the floor, step out, shift my weight to the left to really step on the foot, then shift my weight back to the right foot to lift the left leg off the floor and bring it back to the middle. Hopefully that makes sense. So same as before, but we're now stepping out to the side and in. And the same with the other leg, stepping out to the side and in. Okay, so that's all we're doing. That's all the movement we're doing. We're stepping out to the side, except you're really thinking about this weight shift. Okay, so just like before, we're thinking about weight shifting in order to clear our feet off the floor. So really focus on where you're weight shifting in order to lift your leg. Hopefully that makes sense. Right? So if I'm taking my right leg out, I'm weight shifting to my left to clear my right foot off the floor. I'm taking a step, weight shifting to my right leg because I'm taking a step on that leg. Then I'm weight shifting back to my left leg to lift the right leg off the floor and bring it back to the middle. Keep going. I'm just letting somebody in from the waiting room. Keep going. So the slower you do this, the better, because you really want to control this movement. You really want to feel where you're weight shifting and where you're bringing your center of gravity. So we're not going like this. We're not going as quick as we can. I want you to really focus on the weight shift because there's a big difference between you effectively being able to weight shift and doing this movement with control versus you falling with every step like this. If you're like this and you're falling with every step, it's because we're not weight shifting properly and we're just kind of crash landing onto each of our feet. So it's really important that you're doing this nice and slow and controlled and really feel that weight shift. because you want to build your body's ability to recognize this. You want to build your body awareness of where you're putting your weight, because it'll really help you, not just in the instance of when you're freezing, but also for balance in general, being able to control your center of gravity on top of your base of support. So like I mentioned earlier, one of the main strategies, or not main strategies, because everyone has a different strategy that works for them, but one of the strategies that's effective during an active freezing episode is actually to stand your ground and start weight shifting before you take a step. And so this is why we're starting to practice this kind of weight shift ability, because next week we'll talk more about strategies that you can use for an actual freezing episode. But today we're building the foundations of getting this weight shift going. And then class 2, we'll talk about our strategies for freezing. And then class 3, we'll talk about what to do if those strategies just aren't working for you and you're still trying to approach your destination like a chair or a toilet, what other things you might be able to do to try to unfreeze yourself in that moment. And then class 4, we'll be doing some dual task practice where we're getting our cognition involved, because remember, there's a cognitive basis of freezing as well, like we mentioned earlier. Okay, last one. Nicely done. Back to the middle. Okay, so now that we've done forward stepping and sideways stepping, right, we have backward stepping left. So I'm going to turn sideways so you can see me. So just like before, we did forward stepping, right? And then we did sideways stepping just now. We're now going to go backward stepping. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to shift my weight to my left leg to clear my right leg off the floor. Then I'm going to step back. I'm shifting my weight to that right leg. So I'm stepping on it. Then I'm going to shift my weight forward to the left leg to clear my right foot off the floor to bring it back to the starting position. And I shift my weight back to the middle. Same to the other side. I'm shifting my weight to the right leg to clear the left leg to then step back, and I'm shifting my weight to the left leg. Then I'm shifting my weight to the right leg to clear the left leg off the floor to bring it back to the starting position. And then I'm shifting my weight back to the middle. Can you see that? So this is what you want to practice now. So join me if you haven't already. We're practicing the same thing we were doing for the entire class. We're just now stepping backwards instead. So I want you to do this nice and slowly. Really think about shifting your weight from foot to foot in order for you to be able to take that meaningful step back. And just stay careful with this one, because the backward stepping is always a little tricky. And so if you feel wobbly, do have yourself up with the wall behind you. So in case you fall back, you lean into the wall, or you can set yourself up in a corner like this. So if I fall in either directions, I've got the walls around me, or have a care partner there to kind of supervise just in case. We want to be careful. So as much as we're practicing these skills, we also don't want you to fall at home from practicing these skills, okay? So please be mindful of the safety setup in your home. And remember, we're not doing this as fast as we can, right? Because we really want to practice this weight shifting technique, our ability to shift our weights over our moving base of support. And this is important to do now because in the following weeks of this series, we're going to build on this more. And if you're someone who joined in late today, don't worry. The class is recorded, and so you can always have a look at the recording on our YouTube channel if you need to review some of these concepts before the next class, because we will be building on these skills from class to class. So there won't be a lot of repeats, which is probably a good thing, so you don't get bored of me. Keep going. Weight shifting. You're thinking about shifting your weight to clear your foot off the floor. So I'm shifting my weight to the left to lift my right leg off the floor Then I'm shifting my weight onto the right foot, so I'm stepping on it backwards. Then I'm going to shift my weight to the left leg to clear that left foot again, to bring it back to the middle. I shift my weight to the middle of it. And do the same thing to the other side. Nicely done. Ooh, time is flying by today. We've got a little over 5 minutes left. Keep going. Nice and controlled. Nobody should be falling on their moving base of support. So no crash landing. It should be nice and soft. Practicing this weight shifting, really feeling where your weight is. You're controlling your center of gravity on top of your base of support. So again, I know this feels really slow and it almost feels like you're not doing too much, but it's really important that you're building on this skill. You'll probably notice now that you're more body aware from the last hour of us doing this kind of weight shift, your walking might feel a little bit better after this because you're able to weight shift more effectively. And that's a good thing. So we do really want to practice these kind of subtle movements sometimes to be able to create a better movement pattern in general. So we're not just crash landing and shuffling as we're moving, but we're really thinking about where we're putting our center of gravity. So do 2 more wherever you are in your own time. Do 2 more of these. Nicely done. I see some really great weight shift from you guys. Well done. The backwards one is always a little tough. But think about that weight shift. Nicely done. And when you finish your 2, we're going to make sure you're in front of your chair again. And we're going to practice our sitting down. Okay, now before we sit down, watch me for a second. Remember, we talked about when we're sitting down, we're sticking our bottom back, our chest comes forward, and I'm keeping my center of gravity on top of my base of support the entire time to slowly lower down. So I'm not crash landing backwards. I'm really practicing the slow descent. So we're going to do this together for a count of 10. That's how slow we're going to go. Okay, so make sure your chair is set up behind you. We're going to take 10 counts together to sit down slowly. And I want to see everybody balancing their center of gravity over the base of support so nobody is crashing into the chair. Are we ready? Okay, really feel where your feet are on the floor. You're keeping your center of gravity on top of your base of support. Here we go. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and sit. Nicely done. How did that go? Hopefully good. I didn't see everybody, but I saw most of you, and I like that we were going nice and slow. You can probably feel a lot harder on your leg muscles doing it that way, but it's a really good strategy to practice because we want to always make sure we're controlling our center of gravity on top of our base of support, so we're not falling with every movement we're doing. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a stretch to finish the class. So we're sitting in a chair, nice and tall. We're going to stick one leg out in front like this. Let me do the other side so you can see. I'm sticking my leg out straight, sitting tall, and I'm going to reach my hands down as far down that leg as I can. You should feel a bit of a stretch in the back of the thigh. Doesn't matter if your foot is up or down. If your foot is up, you'll probably get more of a nerve stretch feeling, which it doesn't change the stretch you're feeling here. So you just want to make sure your body is nice and straight, your spine is straight, and you're hinging at the base. Your back is straight, and you'll feel that a little more. Okay, and then we're going to release and do the same thing on the other side. You're straightening the other foot or the other leg out, sitting nice and tall, hinging at the hips to reach your arms down that leg. Hopefully you're feeling that stretch in the back of the thigh. I'm surprised my voice hasn't gone all croaky already. It's a really good thing. Obviously, my lemon and ginger tea must have helped before class. Coming back up, I'm going to turn to face you. We're going to do a bit of inner thigh stretch. You have two options for this. Option one, you can bring your legs out like this. So both legs at the same time, wider than your chair. So you can see my chair is here. My legs are wider than my chair. You put your hands on the inside of your thighs, sit up tall, hinge forward and push those legs back, and you can feel a stretch in the inner thigh. That's one option. The second option is if you don't want to do both legs, you can stick one leg out to the side, and then if you can straighten that leg even better, you can hinge forward at the hips, and you should feel a stretch on the inner thigh there as well. So you can do one leg at a time like that, or you can do both, whichever works for you. But both of them, you're keeping your spine straight and you're hinging at the hips and pushing the legs out. Nicely. And coming back up, we're going to do a thigh stretch. So in a chair, it's a little bit more tricky, but what we're going to do is we're going to face a diagonal in our chair. We're facing the diagonal with our knees. Then the front leg, we're going to slide that foot back such that our kneecap is pointing towards the floor. Can you see that? My kneecap is pointing at the floor. Then I'm going to lean back into the chair to really open up the hip. So I'm leaning back and straightening out the front of my hip, and you should feel that stretch in the thigh there. You know, it looks a little silly, but bear with me. And coming back up. Let's do the same thing on the other side. You're walking to the other diagonal, sliding that front foot back such that your kneecap is pointing at the floor. So you're going to lean back into the backrest of the chair and really straighten that front of the hip. You're really pushing that hip into a straight position. And you should feel that stretch in your thigh muscle as well. Holding it for a couple of breaths. Hopefully you're not holding a breath. And then we're going to come back up. Still sitting up nice and tall. We're going to take our hand, hold on to the opposite knee. Other hand's going to wrap around the back of the chair, sitting tall. We're going to rotate ourselves around to face the back wall, to look at the back wall, sorry. And you're twisting, rotating your spine on the spot here. And release, same to the other side. Take your hand, hold on to the opposite knee. Other hand wrapping around the back of the chair, sitting tall, rotating around to look at the back wall. And release, keep going. I think there's somebody trying to get in from the waiting room, even though the class is ending, that's okay. And okay, I'm gonna turn sideways. We're gonna sit back in the chair again. Lean into the backrest of the chair. We're gonna slouch in the chair for our last stretch. Our arms are gonna come up behind the head. You'll remember this one from the beginning. Make sure your elbows are not forward. You wanna open them out to the side. So you're gonna lean up and over the backrest of the chair. You should feel a stretch in your chest and your upper back. Just be careful you're not going so far back you're tipping the chair over and falling. And release. Let's do that one more time. Arms up behind the head. Open the elbows to the side, leaning up and over the back of the chair. And release. Sitting up nice and tall to finish. Nicely done. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us for week 1 of the thawing out exercise for freezing. Apologies about my sniffles today again. I'm feeling a bit under the weather, but hopefully next week I'll be back to normal, so I won't be all sniffly and sounding croaky. So for those who joined late today, we were saying at the beginning of the series that all 4 classes are recorded, so you're more than welcome to have a look at the YouTube channel if you want to practice any of these skills, and we're building on these skills. So because the series is targeting those of you who are having freezing problems, we're building the foundation here today with our ability to sway and weight shift and be able to create meaningful movement by de-weighting one of our limbs to be able to actually take a step. And then next week, class 2, we're going to be talking about some freezing strategies that you might be able to adopt. If you haven't done any freezing classes before, or haven't heard of any freezing strategies before, we'll talk a little bit about that next week, as well as building on the weight shifting that we did today. And then class number 3, we'll talk a little bit about what we can do if those freezing strategies didn't work for you and you're still trying to get somewhere, like approaching a toilet or a chair and things like that. So after class 2, you can practice those strategies. If they haven't worked for you, don't worry. Class 3, we'll talk a little bit about other ways you might be able to get around freezing. And then class number 4, we'll be doing a little bit of dual tasking, which is a cognitive training activity, if you will, where we're doing a physical activity paired with a cognitive activity, because we know that there's a cognitive element of freezing as well. So we want to kind of target all of these things. Okay, that's enough talking for me. Hopefully that all made sense. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. If you do have any questions for me, you're more than welcome to send me an email if you would like to ask, or if you don't have any questions, you can always think of one and let me know next week as well, whatever works for you. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today.